your time today. I'm so excited to dive into this. I don't even know how to describe this film. I'm sure it's been described every which way under the sun, but it was truly a delight to get to watch it. So thank you for good times and the laughs from this film, and also, going into very personal topics too. I have to say, your film is probably the first film ever that has finally showed me what it's like for people in like Gotham City or in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like what it's like for regular people who are not necessarily the villains and the main characters. No film ever dives into that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean like it felt like just because of like where every like US city is right now, like just in terms of like every single one's becoming like a police state and like is clear like the class struggle isn't any clearer than when you're walking around like an American city and you see like a homeless encampment set up right next to like the ugliest fucking hugest like apartment complex that you've ever seen that's being built and clearly like probably being built by somebody who doesn't even live in the States anymore. Like it's LA's definitely that, Chicago's definitely that, and like it just felt like I don't know, like making a version of Gotham that was like a real genuine reflection of like what it's like to live in America right now, like both for trans people just and like everybody, like it's everybody feels voiceless and scared and broke. It's Gotham is the perfect place to do that, I think.
It is. And yeah, it's always just been so fascinating to me how so many of those elements that you just described are in all of these films, and we dive into these worlds, but it's just never really necessarily explored. It's just the hero's journey or the villain's journey or how their lives are interwoven. But yeah, I want to see what other people are dealing with and the fact that they're very similar to us in our cities.
No, totally. And it's I think the like using Batman villains as sort of stand-ins like both for like comedians and like just queer people was the perfect way to kind of really lean into that because I don't know, like queer people are villainized in this country. Like it's, I mean, we when we dropped the trailer for the movie, like it was I was just getting called a groomer all day. Like people immediately politicize my identity and immediately like act like I'm doing something wrong just for finally kind of being me. And I think like every queer person kind of feels the weight of like being having your identity immediately be a part of like discourse and like politics and just the media as at whole. It's like it's very confusing and I don't know, like I think like everybody can relate to that too, like not just trans people and queer people. Like I think like cis people are also feeling very voiceless. Like everybody I know is kind of coming into a new identity in this like new era of like COVID and AI and like a completely falling apart political system on both sides. Like it's I think like playing with characters that are usually just seen as like one-dimensional mentally ill like psychopaths uh was just super interesting and fun to sort of play with. And I've always been a DC girl. Like I've been reading comics most of my life at this point, and yeah, it's funny because like as you said, like a lot of those themes and things are in a lot of these like movies, like these movie adaptations of these characters, but they're not accentuated as much. They're not really like explored in a direct and sort of three-dimensional way.
Mhm.
But honestly, with the exception of Todd Phillips' Joker, like I remember when I saw Todd Phillips' Joker, I wasn't necessarily like immediately inspired to run out and make a Joker parody, but like it was this movie that I was seeing where I was just like, oh my God, like this is a comic book movie about the Joker, and it's like talking about class struggle and like mental health crisis and like a broken family system. Like I watched it as a trans woman, and was like, "Oh my God, I relate so much to this
I get
character who
it.
also yeah." And like because he also by the end like he gets turned into this like political messiah and like he's doesn't even know what that is. Like he can't contend with the fact that he's some now how now like a political media figure and I don't know, to me that is just like very emblematic of like what the trans experience is, especially like coming out as trans like in show business and stuff. Um so like yeah, this just seemed like the perfect sort of composite for that. And I don't know, like it's sad when I see because I saw like a headline this morning that I should just take as a compliment, but it was like it was about the People's Joker and it was like the People's Joker is like the beautiful death rattle or whatever of superhero cinema like finally going away. And like it's like tone complimentary. Like they're saying like it's cool this movie is coming in right at the end of this like wave. But I read that and I got so sad because what I really hope happens now is just like we see more genre movies and more like comic book movies and stuff that are like this personal and this honest and like overtly political and raw. Like
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I mean, we could definitely do away with like some of these like cinematic universe movies. That's getting a little old.
And I mean, I was going to say the fact that this film is so personal, goes through really kind of your life story in a way. Of course, I don't know how 100% accurate it is in some
It's
instances, but
completely,
completely okay.
it's, yeah, people keep calling it semi-autobiographical, and I'm like, no,
No, this
it's
is it.
embarrassingly true. The only difference is I'm not the Joker, and I didn't date Jared Leto's Joker, but I dated a guy who was quite like him. So yeah, it's very like the movie was really just like expensive art therapy for me more than anything.
Hey, that's the best kind, isn't it?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but as you mentioned, so personal, so raw. And then seeing like those types of headlines, and as you said, being politicized, even though it's just a story that you wanted to tell, and one that so many other people are so excited to tell. It still sucks that we're in that kind of like world where, you know, it's true on this one side, but then there's this also coming along with it too. I know that this film has maybe taken you on a bit of a roller coaster ride the last few years as well. But I guess, as it's about to come out in some select theaters over these next few weeks, like how are you feeling finally, reaching this point, having it come out to wider audiences?
It's it's the total like it just feels amazing. Like I spent a good chunk of last year kind of not really knowing what I was going to do with the movie because like there was anticipation from for it the second we premiered it at TIFF in 2022,
Yeah.
but we had like a lot of baggage that went along with that and a lot more people found out about the movie and the movie also just wasn't really done yet, so there was a lot of maneuvering that needed to happen to get to this moment and kind of I'd say like for like the first 6 months of last year, I was pretty sure that I was going to have to self-distribute the movie, which I had a lot of people try to talk me into doing. I absolutely would have done. I mean, like maybe that would have even been like the best thing to do, like morally in a way, just because the movie is so like anti-capitalist and like you know but like we had a public facing screening at Outfest last year in
Mm.
July and that was what led to me meeting Frank Jaffe from Altered Innocence and like it the second I met him I was like, oh, this is gonna all work out, like this is the right home for it, he gets it, he like just the mere fact that he's not afraid to release the movie and like also believes that this movie is a parody and is protected by fair use because there's a lot of people who fucking roll their eyes at me when I say that and it's like it's true, it's like it's clearly a parody. Like are you telling me that a movie where like Batman has a fucking Snidely Whiplash mustache and like is a little fat bean like is a serious Batman movie? Like grow up. Like I'm not a dummy.
Not even Tim
Um,
Burton is going down that road.
no, I mean he probably wishes he could. But no, seeing some of his concept art for some of his movies sometimes I'm like, oh, they really make him dial back how weird he
I
is.
know.
But I'm excited for Beetlejuice, the new Beetlejuice, because it
Oh,
definitely seems like
same.
he's yeah, like completely the gloves are off and he's doing it. So yeah, I mean I feel great. Like I feel really great and it feels good because like I don't know, there were various points in this journey where we had like bigger distribution models like presented to us and like cool places that I would totally love to work with on other films that like just kind of weren't right for this movie because it always really required somebody um like with a real independent spirit and somebody from the queer community. Like the fact that Frank exclusively releases movies that are queer coming of age films, it was immediately like this is the match made in heaven and it's gonna all be taken care of. Like this is what I was waiting for.
Mhm. And I know that you said, first seeing Joker back in, gosh, when was it, 2019 or something like that, you recognize parts of yourself in that story. I know this is a boring question, but of course I have to ask, like, when did your creative process then start to like, take this story that is known in many aspects, but really just bring it to life with your own fascinating creative changes and flourishes, and I mean so much animation. I mean I could just talk and talk about that, and I know we'll get into that, but I mean like that first time when you realized, okay, this is the story that I want to take.
You know, it was a very gradual process and like so towards the end of 2019, like separate from, Todd Phillips movie and just being, I'd come up as an editor
Hmm.
and a VFX artist and eventually directing and producing as well at Tim and Eric, their production company, Absolutely Productions. And I got to work on like a lot of really amazing shows. Like my first job in Los Angeles was I was a intern on the Eric Andre show, the first season of the Eric Andre show.
Yeah.
And then my next job was I was a camera assistant on season one of Nathan for You. And then like I was able to like get into post production and like I just had this beautiful, amazing comedy career in television where I got to work with all these super talented people. And you know, it was the end of 2019. I made this show with Tim and Eric that was called Tim and Eric's Beef House, which strangely has like become lost media. Like you can't find it anywhere, and it makes me so sad
I
because we
know.
worked so hard on that show. Like it's so it's my favorite thing they've ever done. I mean, I'm biased because like I wrote, directed, and produced on it, but like it was just it really felt like they were evolving into something beautiful with that show. But I was feeling really burnt out after the experience of making that, and because I just kind of had reached this point where I was like, okay, I've been doing comedy most of my life now, and like because I started really really young, like at 13, I became an improviser. Um, and then retired from it at like 24 because it was
I'm
I
done.
moved to LA. Well, I guess is now that I'm around people that are like trying to turn this into a career, it's just annoying being a performer. And I'd rather be a director. But yeah, like I think at the end of that year, I was really just kind of confronting this like longing of like I wanted to make a movie my entire life. Like I knew I was a filmmaker before I knew I was a girl, and like I my earliest memories were wanting to make movies. And I got this idea just for like it was like a body horror thing, kind of about like a drag queen who was physically addicted to irony. And it was basically just me processing how comedy had really been this space for me to like explore identity and self, but it also kind of kept me in some toxic patterns. And I was just kind of recreating my broken family system every step of the way. And I needed to make a piece of art that was interrogating that. And I don't really know what that project was gonna be at that point because it never really evolved past just like kind of writing some essays and stuff, sort of processing all those stuff that thing. And but I knew it was like in this body horror context. And then you flash forward to March 2020. It's pre-vax COVID, everything's starting to shut down. And that also coincided with Todd Phillips he was like on some press tour and he was talking about how woke culture was ruining comedy and how he didn't want to direct comedy films anymore because like people are too sensitive now and like which look, to be fair, like we live in very reactive times. Like I really do think like people do get outraged over like perfectly normal sex scenes in movies now. So I
Yeah.
kind of understand where like those conversations about woke culture are coming in. But coming from the director of Joker, a movie that just made $1 billion is clearly a comedy, is clearly a dark comedy. It's like if anything, Joker 2019 is a fucking fair use parody of King of Comedy. Like it was so funny to read that and just be like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like you're fine. Like look, like it's
Yeah,
like skiing
you've
when you're
never
going
been more fine than in this moment right now.
down. Oh, like if you're miserable right now, buddy, I'm sorry. Like things are I don't know. It's just but I do get where it comes from on some level. But it was seeing that and kind of just having this career of like being a comedy and being in comedy and making comedy that is very fucked up and rude. Like all of the shows I've worked on, there's like diarrhea and like gross dad jokes and gross like everything. Like it was like I and all my friends who are queer who make art or do comedy are like the most like offensive people on the planet, but they don't hurt each other's feelings. Like it's queer sensibility in cinema always was edgy and did push buttons and kind of offend people. So like I think seeing all of that at once, I was like, okay, I think I need to make something Joker related to sort of process this stuff. And the first stage, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but the origins of this project are so complicated and confusing.
No,
This is
it's
actually the
okay.
abbreviated version. But I that article popped up and like the woman who ended up becoming my co-writer, Brie LaRose, commissioned me to re-edit Todd Phillips' Joker.
Mhm.
And she was like, I'll only watch this guy's movie if Vera re-edits it. And I started doing that and kind of thinking I would make like a weird, like everything is like a feature length, everything is terrible video or something, but like is kind of a gay, like processing the queer themes in Batman. And as I was doing that, I was like, fuck this. Like, I've got this idea about this drag queen. I love the DC canon. I've been obsessed with it my entire life. I've got this other comedy friend, Bree, who also is out of work and not getting paid to add fart sound effects to things anymore. So why don't we write a movie together? And why don't we write like a trans Joker parody? And that's really where it started to take shape. And we just wrote what I think is just a beautiful script that was also impossible to film. Like 100% an impossible to execute movie.
I know you made it as hard as possible on yourself.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, so I've gotta self-flagellate. It's the only way to be.
I saw some people saying that this film kind of reminded them of like early John Waters filmography and kind of that way, like pushing the buttons, really kind of going out there. I'm curious if John Waters, was ever like a inspiration to you growing up watching those films, maybe doing this
Uh,
film too.
yeah, every yes to everything you said. I mean, like I can't believe that this movie gets uttered in the same breath as him because he's yeah, like one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Joker the Harlequin, like the version of the Joker I play in the movie, like I was really kind of pulling from like I think like three different I had like three people that I was apart from myself because like the character in the movie really is just based off me. Like the
Mhm,
the the story you're seeing play out is just my story, but told with Batman and Joker characters,
mhm.
and all these like original queer versions of them that you've never seen before. But I was very specifically thinking a lot about three people when I was playing that part. The first of which was Courtney Love, the
Oh.
second Andy Kaufman, and then Divine. And it's like those three because it's like the through line there is just like three people that like I feel like are there's nobody else like them that has ever existed. And were these people that like just are themselves at all costs. Like Divine could only be Divine. Andy Kaufman could only be Andy Kaufman, and Courtney. I mean, like, oh God, I hope I get to meet her someday. Um, and yeah, like I think I was thinking a lot as far as like John Waters specific stuff. Like I love his whole filmography. But Desperate Living was the big one that I was thinking about while making this film, because Desperate Living is like it's like a fairy tale or something. Like
Mhm.
it's so disgusting and horrible, and like to all the Zoomers listening, it is problematic, but it's beautifully problematic and like empowering. Like there's like a T for T relationship in that movie before the phrase T for T was even invented. Like it is it's my one of my favorite movies of all time. Like it's only 90 minutes long, and whenever it ends, I'm like, oh, I wish I could watch another 3 hours because no, I love a queer fairy tale.
He was actually just here doing a talk for a speaker series. And I mean, it's
Cool.
like every thought process that goes into his head will come out of his mouth, no matter how inappropriate or any wild it may be. I mean, what a what a fantastic person.
No, and I mean that's the kind of freedom that not only that I wanted to like bring to this movie, but like just going forward, like in making art, like I don't really have time anymore to be coy or like play the game or whatever. Like I don't know, I worked in TV for like 10 years, so I've just talked to so many people who just like lie to your face. And it's just like I am done. I'm like done. I can do nothing, but I have a little bit more of a filter than John, I think. But that's just because I'm on Adderall, and I think like the thing I really do like always try to take away from him and his art is like that honesty and that ability to just go like, oh, you think we're freaks? You think we're fucking villains? Well, here, I'll show you like a queer villain. I'll show you how disgusting I am. I'm the filthiest person in the world. Like that's exactly what I want to hopefully espouse. Yeah.
Mhm. I know we have a few minutes left together, but I mean, I just kind of wanted to dive a little bit more into just I mean, it's just so great to see a queer film just be 100%, as honest, as queer as it wants to be. There's no necessarily like, the usual tragic story tropes that are put in there, the let's trauma dump all this kind of stuff. Not saying that there are not, those very personal elements in this film, but I mean, it was a refreshing way to see a queer film. And I mean, I can only
Thank
imagine
you.
that you probably have like a million and one other ideas in terms of how you want to and what you want to tell story wise. But I guess what for you, what was the most important thing as you were tackling on as personal of a story as this, and maybe even thinking about other people who would be watching it down the line?
There's two things that I want to talk about here. I think the first being like, I when Bree and I wrote the script, it was like we talked about it a lot as like I think of it mainly as like a mother-daughter story.
Mhm.
Like it's a story really about a mother and her trans daughter and the two of them trying to understand each other. And
Yeah.
um, I dedicated the movie to my mom, who I do have like a complicated relationship with. Like coming out in my family was not ideal, and like I wanted to process that very honestly in my art, but I also wanted to do it in a way that was optimistic, so like realistic but optimistic, and not just like a fuck you letter to my mom, uh because I don't know, like I my mom taught me, my mom, like if I could say she did one thing right in my childhood, is like she always encouraged me to make art and to do that. When I started doing it professionally and she saw the kind of art I was making, she was a little had some
Uh,
notes. But I wanted to, so I processed that in the movie as well. Like I think a lot of comedians go through that with their parents where they're like, "Do you have to say so many filthy words? Like you're fucking embarrassing us." So yeah, I mean, I really didn't want to make something that like would make my family feel bad or hurt anybody's feelings. And I think the other tightrope that I really walked with this one was with the queer romance angle in it, because, Joker the Harlequin ends up falling in love with uh this trans guy in the movie who is, basically a parody of Jared Leto's Joker. Like we use Jared Leto's, Joker makeup in it and stuff. And that is a character also based off of a real person. Like I had this pretty intense relationship with somebody who was a trans guy, and it was very toxic, very codependent, very abusive. But it was in that relationship that I figured out I was trans, and he was the first person that really saw me for who I was. And like if there's one thing he did right, it's like when I came out to him, he was just like, "Yeah, duh!" Like it was fucking awesome, and like I have that support. So I wanted to talk about that also in a nuanced way. How like I think a lot of queer people get into these like relationships early in their lives, or in their queer coming out lives, where they should not be with this person for long term. This is a person that's in their life to like be their family in that moment and prop them up and encourage them. And I think a lot of the times that comes with somebody who, yeah, like you just really shouldn't be with. And I don't know. I think when writing a character like that, particularly a trans masculine character, like I really didn't want to lean into any of the tropes we've ever seen about trans mask characters, because I mean, you talk about how bad like trans representation is for trans women, like trans guys kind of have it worse. Like, because they're always portrayed as like angry, like weirdos, or like lesbians who couldn't make it work. It's like
Mm.
fucked. It's really fucked. And I didn't
Hmm.
want Mr. J, who's the trans guy character in our movie. Like, I wanted him to, yes, be like a realistic representation of like that toxic Joker and Harley Quinn dynamic, while also still giving him humanity and hopefully like arriving at the end of the film for both his character and the mother character, where it's like it's not villainizing these people. It's presenting them in the context in which like we're acknowledging that we all live in this world where like, yeah, we hurt each other because we're constantly being hurt. And queer people especially, like we live in a society where we like completely go through life uh on the fringe, and like sometimes we end up with people we shouldn't, and in situations we shouldn't, and like we kind of have to figure that out on our own and carve our own path. And that's really what I wanted to do with that. And I don't know, like it was it's pretty stressful. Writing this movie was stressful at times just because like, and like, then once it gets to like adding visual jokes and stuff, there was a lot of things about transness and trans culture that I was like, should I really be including this? Like, is it really like, is this problematic? Or like because like we have a joke about coding in the movie and how like a lot of trans women and incels are coders, and like that's a transphobic joke and it's in the movie. But I wanted to really just like, I think queer representation is so sanitized and so horrible. Even sometimes when it's made by queer people, like they feel that pressure to make something that's accessible to cis audiences, so they make
Mm.
something that's like either showing us as exclusively victims, or showing something that's like, look, we're just all just the same. And it's like, we're not the same. Like, two gay people being married is not the same as a man and woman being married. Like, a trans woman is not, my experience is very different from that of a cis woman. There are similarities there, but it's different. So like our art shouldn't be homogenized. It should be honest and like actually reflect the real experience that we're having as people. And yeah, I really wanted to stay true to that every step of the way with this. And thankfully I was just surrounded by a team that was like, that only encouraged that. Like nobody involved in the making of this movie was afraid of anything. And I needed that because there were many times in the process where I was afraid to tell that kind of truth, I think.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I'm so happy that you had the right people around you, that you all stuck to your guns on this and said, we're doing it. And there was no like outside influence either. I'm sure, bigger production companies that probably
Oh
changes a
yeah.
lot of people's stories too. So, I mean, I really applaud you on that. Um,
Thank you.
of course. We are talking today when the poster for the second Joker movie came out, was showing Lady Gaga and Joaquin
I
Phoenix.
didn't see it yet.
Oh my
Can I
goodness.
look it up right now?
Yes, please do. But
Oh wow.
but I have to ask you, I mean, that's going to be like a jukebox musical. Are we getting a The People's Joker musical as a sequel?
Oh my God, I love this poster. I don't think I'm gonna ever make a Joker jukebox musical, especially now that Todd got to it first. I mean, our festival cut of the movie kind of was a jukebox musical on some level.
Oh
Like
my
we had a lot.
gosh.
We had cover songs. Like I'd commissioned a bunch of cover songs for the film, and I tried to license those. Like I had a music budget to license them, and none of the music publishing companies wanted to work with us. Specifically citing like our baggage with Warner Brothers.
Hmm.
And then when I found out that Joker 2 was a jukebox musical, I was like, I wonder if they maybe had some of the same songs and that was actually the
Oh
problem.
my God, that would be
Um,
hilarious.
yeah, I'm really excited to see it though. Like I do. I mean, I get why that movie is not for everybody, and it's been politicized in the weirdest, like shittiest ways possible. But like, I love that Joker verse, and I'm definitely going to show up for it. I pretended to be a gay guy for 6 years when I didn't know I was trans, so obviously I care about Lady Gaga. So yeah, sign me up. I can't wait for the trailer.
I
Yeah,
know. I think it's
so
coming out in a few days, so we're ready.
yeah.
Thank you so very much for your time, Vera. It was such a pleasure to chat with you about this film. And again, just huge congratulations on it's been a long journey, it's been a tough journey, but it's coming out and I'm super happy for you.
Thank you. This was so wonderful. Thanks. I'm really glad I had the chance to talk to you.
Oh, thank you.